Dolphins fans can already feel the direction of this team starting to change a little bit. Because over the last few days, two completely different stories came out of Miami, and both of them say a lot about where this franchise is headed right now. One of them has people inside the building genuinely shocked by what they're seeing from a rookie already. And the other is the kind of under-the-radar move that most fans probably ignored at first, but it could quietly tell us something really important about what this coaching staff wants this offense to become in 2026. And honestly, after everything this fan base has been through lately, these are exactly the kinds of developments we have to pay attention to. Because whether you believe this team is rebuilding, reloading, or trying to stay alive in the AFC picture, these moves matter. So we gotta talk about it. But before we do, if you're a real Dolphins fan and you actually ride with this team through the good and the painful stuff too, do me a quick favor. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and help us reach our first 3,000 subscribers here on Dolphins Nation Report. This channel is brand new, and we're building a real Dolphins community here together. Alright, so let's start with the first big story, and honestly, this one should get Dolphins fans excited. The reaction coming out of rookie minicamp around Kaden Proctor has been impossible to ignore. Miami used a first-round pick on Proctor during the 2026 NFL Draft because this offensive line desperately needed help. Everybody watching this team last season saw the same thing. The Dolphins simply could not keep living with inconsistent protection up front, especially with all the pressure on this offense to finally compete at a higher level. And now, just days after rookie minicamp, offensive coordinator Bobby Slowik already sounds blown away by what he's seeing physically from Proctor. Slowik literally said Proctor is absolutely massive and called him one of the biggest human beings he's ever seen in his life. He even joked that Proctor's legs are bigger than him. But the crazy part is what he said after that, because according to Slowik, despite being enormous, Proctor still moves like a player who weighs around 290 or 300 pounds. That's the part that matters most. Because everybody already knew Kaden Proctor was huge. The guy is 6'6" and 352 pounds. That's rare size even by NFL standards. But size alone doesn't make somebody a franchise offensive lineman. What Miami is hoping is that his movement skills and athleticism can eventually turn him into a dominant player. And honestly, if that happens, this entire offense changes. Now, there were concerns about Proctor coming into the draft. Scouts love the physical tools, but they also pointed out inconsistencies in pass protection. His technique still needs work. His hand placement can improve. His balance can improve. There are moments where his footwork gets sloppy against speed rushers. That's exactly why he wasn't taken at the very top of the draft, despite having elite physical traits. But here's what I like about this situation for Miami. The Dolphins are not forcing him into a panic situation immediately at left tackle. General Manager John Eric Sullivan already confirmed that Proctor is expected to play left guard during his rookie season. And honestly, I think that's smart. It gives him time to adjust to NFL speed, NFL power, and NFL pass rush complexity without immediately throwing him into the hardest offensive line position in football. Then after a full year, Miami can reevaluate everything and decide whether they eventually want him at guard long-term or move him back outside to tackle. Now, not everybody agreed with that decision. ESPN insider Jeremy Fowler admitted he was surprised Miami plans to use Proctor at guard because a huge part of his draft value came from his experience at left tackle. Fowler specifically pointed out that Proctor has the feet and movement ability to play tackle. But Fowler also explained why this makes sense for the Dolphins right now, because Miami already believes they have emerging talent in Patrick Paul at left tackle, and that's actually a massive detail here. If Patrick Paul develops the way the Dolphins hope, then suddenly Miami could have flexibility across the offensive line instead of constantly scrambling to survive injuries in weak spots like they've done for years. And look, Dolphins fans know this better than anybody. This team has had skill players. This team has had speed. This team has had explosive moments. But too often, games completely fell apart because the offensive line couldn't hold up consistently. That's why this Proctor situation matters so much more than just mini-camp hype. Miami is trying to build something more stable up front. And based on Bobby Slowik's reaction already, it sounds like the coaching staff believes the physical upside here is enormous. Now switching to the second story. This one is way more low-key, but honestly, I think it's fascinating. The Dolphins signed DJ Herman after rookie minicamp. At first glance, most fans probably saw the move and moved on immediately. Undrafted guy, camp body, depth piece. But when you actually look deeper into it, this move tells us something interesting about what Miami could be experimenting with offensively under Bobby Slowick, because DJ Herman was a linebacker at San Diego State. But the Dolphins signed him as a fullback. That's the twist. And suddenly, you start connecting dots. Miami currently has 91 players on the offseason roster because of the exemption tied to rookie tight end Seydou Traoré through the International Player Pathway Program. Herman becomes the 25th rookie currently attached to this roster when you combine the 13 draft picks, 11 undrafted free agents, and now him. But what's really interesting is that Herman is currently the only true fullback listed on the roster. And remember, the Dolphins moved on from Alec Ingold earlier this offseason. Ingold eventually signed with the Los Angeles Chargers. That mattered more than people realize. Because even though Mike McDaniel's offense was known for speed and motion, Ingold quietly played an important role in certain packages, protections, and short yardage situations. Now Bobby Slowick steps in as offensive coordinator, and suddenly, Miami is experimenting again with the fullback position. And the comparison gets even crazier when you realize Alec Ingold also started his football journey as a linebacker in college at Wisconsin before converting to fullback. DJ Herman is making that exact same transition. They even have similar size. Herman is 6'1" and 235 pounds, while Ingold was listed around 6'1" and 232. So clearly Miami sees at least some developmental similarities there. Now realistically, Herman is still a long shot to make the 53-man roster. At San Diego State, he only started 2 games across 4 college seasons. Most of his impact came on special teams, where he built his reputation through effort and physicality. He finished college with 56 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and 2 passes defended. So if he's going to survive roster cuts, special teams will probably be his ticket. But I actually think the bigger story here is what this says about Miami's offensive identity moving forward. Because the Dolphins also drafted Will Kachmarek in the 3rd round, and he's viewed as a blocking specialist tight end who can line up in multiple spots, including H-back situations. That could mean we start seeing more 2 tight end looks this season, instead of constantly relying only on speed and spread concepts. And honestly, I don't hate that idea at all. The AFC is brutal now. At some point, Miami has to prove they can play physical football too, not just fast football. There are going to be games in cold weather, short yardage moments, red zone situations, playoff-type environments where toughness matters just as much as speed. And these moves, drafting Kaden Proctor, adding Will Kachmarek, experimenting with DJ Herman at fullback, they all quietly point in the same direction. This team is trying to become more physical. Now, before we close this out, there's another important layer to all this involving Miami's rookie class. ESPN's Ben Solak recently mentioned 2 Dolphins defenders as long-shot candidates for Defensive Rookie of the Year. First-round cornerback Chris Johnson and second-round linebacker Jacob Rodriguez. And honestly, Chris Johnson probably has the better chance. Solak believes Johnson could put up big interception numbers if he gets immediate playing time, which he absolutely should. Miami traded up to get him out of San Diego State, so clearly they believe this kid can become a true difference maker. Solak even compared the possibility to what Sauce Gardner did with the New York Jets back in 2022. That's obviously a huge comparison, but you can understand the vision. If Johnson starts locking people down and creating turnovers right away, the national media is going to notice. Jacob Rodriguez is interesting too. Solak compared him stylistically to Carson Schwessinger, last year's Defensive Rookie of the Year for the Cleveland Browns. Rodriguez is undersized at 6'1" and 230 pounds, but he's known for finding the football constantly. The issue is opportunity. Because Rodriguez now has to compete with Jordan Brooks in a linebacker room that suddenly feels crowded. And when it comes to awards like Defensive Rookie of the Year, stats matter a lot. If Brooks absorbs a lot of the tackle production, it becomes harder for Rodriguez to put together the kind of flashy numbers voters usually notice. Still, even being mentioned in those conversations says something positive about this draft class overall. And honestly, that's probably the biggest takeaway from everything happening right now. For the first time in a while, it feels like Miami is trying to build something more balanced. Not just flashy, not just fast, not just highlight plays. Bigger offensive linemen, more physical packages, young defensive talent, versatility, competition. That's the kind of stuff serious playoff teams build on. Now, does that guarantee success? Of course not. This team still has major pressure on it. Dolphins fans are tired of hearing about potential. Everybody wants real results now, especially with the AFC getting tougher every single year. But I will say this, there's at least a vision starting to appear here. And if Kaden Proctor develops into the monster Miami believes he can become, that could end up being one of the most important draft picks this franchise has made in years. And if guys like Chris Johnson or Jacob Rodriguez hit early too, suddenly this roster starts looking a whole lot more interesting than people outside Miami want to admit. All right, Dolphins fans, let me know what you think in the comments. Are you excited about Kaden Proctor playing guard first? Do you think Chris Johnson actually has a real shot at Defensive Rookie of the Year? And what do you think about the Dolphins experimenting with DJ Herman at fullback? If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to Dolphins Nation Report, and help us reach our first 3,000 subscribers. The channel is brand new, and if you're the type of Dolphins fan who loves real conversations, honest opinions, and daily coverage of this team, you're in the right place.